Hi everyone, I am Zubair Hassan. Hope you all are fine. Today we are going to discuss a very important topic on hypothesis. So dear friends, let's go on today's topic hypothesis. So dear friends, we will discuss today the meaning of hypothesis and concept of hypothesis and the formulation of hypothesis and what are the types of hypothesis. So dear friends, at first let's discuss the meaning and concept of hypothesis. Hypothesis is a tentative guess. Hypothesis is a tentative guess and presumed assumption and proposed explanation of a supposition for the sake of argument so that it can reach out its conclusions by testing and might be verified. So hypothesis is a tentative guess, we can say. Tentative means which has no proof before, and presumed assumption. An assumption given by the researcher, given by an investigator, based on the theory which he has read out before, based on the review of the related literature which he had studied, and based on the background of the knowledge related to the subject on which he is going to conduct a research, or we can say which he is studying, and proposed explanation. Proposed explanation is means we can say that statement an investigator is proposing or proposed, and we can say can propose that statement based on the background knowledge which generates the idea in his mind, and he can state any proposal, or we can say he can state any statement like a supposition, we can say, which has no proof before, which has not been verified yet, for the sake of argument, related to his study, and which he wants to test now, and he wants to verify statistically. So means hypothesis a tentative guess, presumed assumption, and proposed explanation of a supposition for the sake of argument. Hypothesis can be stated for the sake of argument so that it can be tested and might be verified later on to reach out the general conclusions, to reach out the conclusions of the study, to find the best results of the study. So this is the meaning of hypothesis. And uh, at below I have mentioned a definition given by Merriam-Webster. We can make it best understood its meaning and concept by this well-defined definition. Hypothesis is a tentative assumption. Similarly, he has written a tentative assumption made in order to draw out and test its logical or empirical consequences. Tentative assumption, that assumption which is given by the researcher or investigator, which has no any proof yet, but he gives this assumption based on his background theory, what he has read it out before, what he has what he has, we can say, get it out from his review of related literature, and based on that reviews he had the generation of ideas he is going to state now, and these ideas in his mind which has been generated by reviewing the related literature and by reading out the existing theories related to his study, he is stating, or we can say proposing, an explanation like in the form of a supposition which has no proof yet. So for test in a logical way or in empirical, so can he can make its conclusion by testing, by verifying. So friends, this is the meaning of hypothesis. Let's go ahead on the formulation of hypothesis. Dear friends, Formulation of hypothesis, we can say how the hypothesis is being formulated, how we can formulate a hypothesis. There are some sources based on which we can say by these sources we can formulate a hypothesis. As generally, you may be ever known of this fact that hypothesis is being formulated based on the set objective, which the objective has been set before. Hypothesis is formulated based on the objectives, but the formulation of hypothesis, there are some sources, standards on which a researcher can state or formulate a hypothesis. These sources are like we can say background knowledge and personal experiences and analogy and versatility of intellect and scientific theory. As in the meaning, I have mentioned a proposed explanation, presumed assumption, and tentative guess. Presumed assumption, when we say, means that assumption which an investigator can presume based on the theory, based on the review of the related literature. The review of the related literature, that literature which is related to the study, which is related to the subject which the investigator is going to study. So background knowledge of the subject, background knowledge of the study which the investigator is going to study, which for example I can make you understand, an investigator is going to study a population. If he has a vast background knowledge related to the population, he can state a hypothesis. He can state a hypothesis because he has a vast background knowledge related to the population. And second one, personal experiences. Personal experience means what he has personal experiences, personal interest related to the population, in relation to the population. If a researcher has a good personal experience, a good personal experience related to the subject, related to the population which he is studying, he can state a good hypothesis. He can state a good hypothesis. And analogy. Analogy means comparison. Analogy means comparison. He can have good comparison of his study, of his subject, his traits on subject. And versatility of intellect. And versatility of intellect, we can say, his versatility of intellect and scientific theory. Scientific theory. If he has well known of the theories related to the population, well known of the knowledge, previous knowledge related to the population, he can formulate a good hypothesis. So, friends, hypothesis at last, we understood that, yeah, we can say we understand that at last we can say we understood the formulation of hypothesis means to state a hypothesis based on a supposition, or the hypothesis can be formulated when a researcher has background knowledge related to his study, we can say related to the population on which the researcher is going to study. On the researcher is studying the subject, we can say personal experience in relation to the subject, and analogy in relation to the subject. Analogy can be done when the researcher has background knowledge. Personal experience can be done when the researcher has background knowledge. Versatility of intellect is possible only when the researcher has all the three: background knowledge, personal experience, and analogy. And scientific theory. Scientific theory is all the three, four, five types. When the researcher has a complete grip on these things, he can state, we can say, a good hypothesis. Now, friends, let's move ahead. The types of hypothesis. Now, types of hypothesis. Types of hypothesis. As you know, there are two types of hypothesis: null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Now, let's discuss what does mean null hypothesis and what alternative hypothesis means. Null hypothesis means a statistical hypothesis. Null hypothesis means a statistical hypothesis. We can say null hypothesis is a general statement or default position that there is no relationship between two measured phenomena. There is no relationship between two measured phenomena or no association among groups. Null hypothesis I can make you understand with my example. Like, null hypothesis is a type of hypothesis which is being stated by an investigator. Then, when he didn't get any idea, what will happen further, he didn't get any idea. Between two major phenomena, or no, we can say no association among groups. And earlier we discussed hypothesis is stated or formulated based on the background knowledge, personal experiences. When he read out the background knowledge related to the subject, and vast theories he studied, and many reviews of the related literature of the related population, related subject on which he is studying, but he didn't get anything. It means it doesn't mean he cannot state hypothesis now, he cannot state any research question now, he cannot state any supposition now. No, he can state an explanation, but based on, we can say, based on a nature, in the form of null. A researcher states a hypothesis, then when he didn't get any idea what will happen at further, he states hypothesis based on the form of null. Null means I didn't got anything. Null means like I have written here. It is often denoted H0, pronounced as H naught. Hypothesis naught means there is nothing. H null or H0. Zero means nothing supported me. What will happen at further? So that the researcher stated this form of hypothesis. Like, generally, there is no relationship between two variables. There is no relationship between two measured phenomena. It is formed in the form of no. So that is called null hypothesis. A null hypothesis is contrasted with an alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis is contrasted always with an alternative hypothesis. Like, we can say, if you state a hypothesis in the form of null, there is always contrasted a second hypothesis, like alternative hypothesis, at behind. For example, you stated null hypothesis, I got no any idea, but behind, like we can say, and another hypothesis is contrasted at behind this hypothesis. You are asking, there is no, but alternative hypothesis is with it, but in contrast with it, also with it. Null hypothesis also with it, but in contrast. When you state alternative hypothesis, null hypothesis also always with it, but in contrast. I can make you understand it further, like, and the two hypotheses are distinguished on the basis of the data. Two hypotheses are distinguished on the basis of the data with certain error rates. It is used in formulating answers in researches. It is used in formulating answers in researches. It is also called hypothesis of negation. It's also called hypothesis of negation. Null hypothesis also called hypothesis of negation. Hypothesis is also called statistical hypothesis. Null hypothesis also called statistical hypothesis because it is proved based on testing. Null hypothesis is proved based on testing. It is the we can say statistical hypothesis, hypothesis of negation, which is based on zero, and statistical hypothesis, which is being tested and proved and verified. So friends, this was all about the null hypothesis, and you know now how the null hypothesis is being formulated, why null hypothesis is being formulated, and you also understood that why null hypothesis is being formulated and how null hypothesis is being formulated. These were very important two things and two concepts in this hypothesis. I hope you got proper understanding of null hypothesis. And now alternative hypothesis is second hypothesis. Means second type of hypothesis, alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis is usually consistent with the research hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis is usually consistent with the research hypothesis because it is constructed from literature review. It is constructed from literature review, previous studies, and old studies. However, the research hypothesis is sometimes consistent with null hypothesis, as I have already asked you before. When a researcher or investigator states null hypothesis, alternative always lies in contrast behind. And when a researcher, for example, selects or proposed alternative hypothesis, and null hypothesis always lying in contrast behind. So, however, the research hypothesis sometimes consistent with the null hypothesis. Means alternative hypothesis usually consistent with the research hypothesis because it is constructed from literature review. It is also constructed from literature review, previous studies, or theories, etc. Alternative hypothesis also constructed from literature review. We can say old theories which the researcher has studies before, and those reviews, that knowledge which the researcher is studies related to his subject on which he is going to study, or we can say on which he is studying. And in statistics, alternative hypothesis often denoted as, in statistics, alternative hypothesis denoted as HA, HA or H1 hypothesis are formulated to compare in a statistical hypothesis test. In statistics, alternative hypothesis is often denoted as HA or H1 hypothesis or formulated to compare in a statistical hypothesis test. But dear friends, alternative hypothesis, when we talk about alternative hypothesis, it has two types, like we can say directional hypothesis and non-directional hypothesis. Directional hypothesis and non-directional hypothesis. When a researcher, for example, I can make you understand, states a hypothesis in the form of alternative, in alternative form, he usually takes a form or either in direction, either in non-directional. What are these tools? These tools are written here. Directional hypothesis. A directional hypothesis is prediction made by researcher. Directional hypothesis is prediction made by researcher regarding a positive or negative change. If there can have a change either in positive side or either in negative side, so that there can be a statement like in the form of direction. There can be a statement in the form of direction, either positive or negative. This is also a prediction. This is also a, we can say, a supposition. And we can say this is also directional hypothesis and presumed explanation based on background knowledge. But in another form, we can say the form of directional form. So directional hypothesis is a prediction made by a researcher regarding a positive or negative change, relationship, or difference between two variables of a population. Difference between two variables of a population. This prediction is typically based on past research. This prediction is typically also based on past research, also based on past reviews, also based on past theories, also based on past knowledge, existing knowledge which the researcher or the investigator or you are studying or you had studied before. Extensive experiences, personal experiences, extensive experiences, or old theories. Keywords that I had mentioned here to distinguish the directional hypothesis are tail and head, higher, lower, higher and lower, more or less, increase, decrease, positive and negative. This is the simple example for directional hypothesis. Like when there are two options of a tail, we can say there are two options of a tail, either head or a tail. But you can state for example higher, lower. You can state a tail, you can state a head based on the assumption that you already know there will be a head. Or let's know through another example, higher and lower, or positive and negative, for example, you reviewed many literature related to your subject on which you are going to study on the subject to which you are studying, on which you are researching. So the background knowledge you studied, you got an idea that all your background knowledge or related review of the related literature, all the studies which you studied related to your research has supported that, has supported positively, has supported that there will be a tail definitely, there will be a tail definitely, or there will be a head definitely, or we can say higher, something at higher definitely, something at lower definitely, or something more definitely, or something low definitely. When you got proper understanding or proper knowledge and um, based or verified idea before by lost reviews, lost researches, lost literature, you got an assumption that there will be something at higher or something at lower. Directional means either in positive direction, either in negative direction. So based on the background theory, you are stating that there will be something at higher. You are stating there is something at higher or lower. For example, you are stating that the population in positive nature or in negative nature. So this is directional hypothesis. And non-directional hypothesis. What does it mean? Non-directional means non-directional hypothesis is a two-tailed hypothesis. Non-directional hypothesis is a two-tailed hypothesis. Something twisting, not difficult. First directional hypothesis, either positive or negative, either positively or negatively statement, to give a statement based on your background theory, background knowledge, which supported you, which is supporting you that there will be a positive statement, there will be a negative statement. And now non-directional hypothesis, and non-directional hypothesis is a two-tailed hypothesis. Two-tailed hypothesis means both, that does not predict the direction. Means when you got, for example, when you got both options from the previous knowledge, there will be both positive and negative. What you will state, what you will predict, doesn't make you on any decision in your mind. It will generate some confusion. It will generate some confusion. But at that time, what you will generate, what the statement you will explore, what the statement you will explore. You have to state, but you will state definitely in the form of non-directional hypothesis. You will state definitely in the form of non-direction. As I have written, the direction of the difference or relationship. The direction of the difference of the relation. You does not predict the direction of the difference or relationship. For example, girls and boys. I can make you understand with the best example. Like girls and boys are different in terms of helpfulness. For example, there are two persons, girl and boy, are different in terms, different in gender, but they both are helpfulness. They both are helpfulness. What you can say at that time? What you can state at that time? You can state at that time, but not in the support of boy or in the support of girl. If you support boy only, if you state in the favor of boy only, that means you make direction here. You make direction here. If you didn't support, if you supported both, if you supported both, that means you state, you stated a statement in the form of non-directional, in the form of non-directional. So friends, this was all about the formulation of hypothesis and the types of hypothesis. I hope you got proper understanding of hypothesis. So thank you.